Hi guys, it's Mr. Gonzalez again, here with Lesson 11, 3/4 time signatures. The main objective of this lesson is to be able to identify 3/4 time signatures and understand how they affect music. Let's go. In 3/4 time, the top 3 means there are 3 beats per measure, and the bottom 4 means the quarter note receives 1 beat. Like in 2/4 time and 4/4 time, the quarter note and quarter rest both receive 1 beat. The half note receives 2 beats, but instead of using a half rest in 3/4 time, we indicate 2 beats of rest by using 2 quarter rests. A whole rest is used for a full measure of rest, even if there are only 3 beats in each measure. In writing music, a half note and whole note are never used in 3/4 time. Here we can see our quarter notes all receiving 1 beat each, our half note receiving 1 beat with a quarter note at the end to help complete the measure. Then we have a quarter note here receiving 1 beat, and then to fill out the last 2 measures we use 2 quarter rests. In the very last measure you can see the whole note taking up the entire measure. 2/4 time, 3/4 time, and 4/4 time all have 4s as the bottom number, meaning the quarter note always receives 1 beat. The difference is that 2/4 time has 2 beats per measure, 3/4 time has 3 beats per measure, and 4/4 time has 4 beats per measure. Let's take a look at some exercises. In our first exercise, we are going to circle the measures with the incorrect number of beats. Let's go. Since we're in 4/4 time, we know we only need 3 beats per measure. So let's get counting. So we have 2 beats from this half note and 1 beat from this quarter note. 3 beats in this measure, just fine. We use a whole rest to indicate a full measure of rest in 3/4 time, so this is just fine. Here we see 2 quarter notes equaling 2 beats, and then a half note equaling 2 beats. So we have 4 beats in this measure. This measure has too many beats. It is incorrect. Next, we see 2 quarter rests equaling 2 beats together, and then a quarter note. We have 3 beats in this measure. This measure is A-OK. Here we see a quarter note, quarter rest, quarter note, and quarter rest. There are 4 beats in this measure. That's too many. This is incorrect. Next, we see a quarter rest with 2 quarter notes. There are 3 beats in this measure. We are just fine. And our last measure has a whole rest, and that checks out. For our next example, we are going to draw bar lines in the correct places. I have already drawn double bar lines at the end for us. Let's go. We are still in 3/4 time, so we know every 3 beats we draw a bar line. Let's count. So beat 1, 2, and 3. Bar line. Let's look for our next measure. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3. Aha! Bar line. Onward. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and bar line. Let's keep going. So we have beat 1, and then beats 2 and 3 are in this half note. So we can add a bar line right here. Let's keep counting. So we have beat 1, and 2 and 3 are in this half note, so our bar line can go right here. Next we have beat 1, 2, and 3. Our bar line goes right here. Let's count some more. Beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, bar line right here. And then we have a whole rest in the last measure. For our last exercise, we will add note stems and bar lines. I have already added a double bar line at the end. Remember, this is a grand staff, so when we draw our bar lines, they go all the way through both staves. Let's get started. To make things a bit easier, I'm going to add our stems first. Let's go. Let's start with the darkened note heads. We know for sure that darkened note heads are going to be quarter notes, so we can add stems to all of our darkened note heads. But remember, if the note is on or above this third line, the stem goes on the left facing down, and if it is below the third line, the stem goes on the right side facing up. Now that the quarter notes are taken care of, let's look at these other note heads. These note heads could either be half notes or whole notes, but since we are in 3/4 time, we know we do not use whole notes, so these will be half notes. Let's add those stems. Now that we have all our stems in place, it will be easier to keep track of how many notes we have per measure. Let's add those bar lines now. So let's count 3 beats and we'll add a bar line. Since we have notes here and we have rests up here, we'll count our notes first. So we have beat 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so it's safe to assume that we can add our bar line right here, and our first treble clef measure is a rest. Since we have another whole rest right here, we'll count the notes that we have in the treble clef. So we have beat 1, beat 2, and beat 3. Okay, we can add our bar line right here, and the second measure of the bass clef will be a rest. Let's continue going where the notes are. We have 2 beats here and 1 beat here. So we can add our bar line right there, and this third measure will be a rest. Let's count the treble clef, since there's already notes in the bass clef. So beat 1, beat 2, beat 3. Let's double check the bass clef. Beat 1, 2, and 3. Perfect. We can add our bar line right here. And let's check our last measure. So we have 2 beats and 1 beat with a whole rest at the bottom. Everything checks out. We are A-OK. And that's it for today's lesson, guys. I hope you feel more confident in your ability to identify 3/4 time signatures and understand how they affect music. In our next lesson, we will be looking at dotted half notes.